Pretty standard. Let's take a look. So he hasn't fallen for... Oh no, he has. He's got plasma pistols on his berserkers. I'm actually really curious if Chris is watching. Did you ever fire a plasma pistol? Let me know what you think about these rosters. Do you think anybody took some weird picks? Do you think anything I don't know. Do you think? Do you think? Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today I am going over the Bad Moon tournament that happened on Saturday's top 8 rosters. Now, if I know a little bit more about why the person put what on the roster, I will mention it, but mainly this is going to be me speculating about why they put what they did onto the roster, because I don't actually know. However, let's start with Simon Pridis. He came first. He took Tau. I hope you can see the roster, but if you can't, he has 2 leaders named down there. One being a stealth suit with a fusion blaster, one being just a regular Chasui with pulse rifle marker light. Then he has 3 more stealth suits, one with fusion blaster, 2 with burst cannon. Then he has the rest of his list, which is pretty much what you'd expect, which is 3 rail rifles, one being a demo, one being a sniper, one being a comms, and then a bunch of gun drones, 1 grav inhibitor drone, 1 recon drone. Now I played Simon in round 1, we drew, and I believe the way he played his list was pretty simple. He only actually had 1 list with him. He never changed it throughout the entire tournament, and all of these stealth suits are on there purely as a fake out, bit of a bluff, and that's it. Yeah, there you go. So that was easy. I know that he never changed his list. He played the same list every time, which was the Chasui as the leader, the 3 rail rifles, grav inhibitor drone, recon drone, and filled the rest with gun drones. And that was it. Nice and simple. Next up, we've got me. Now, we're going to notice that I'm not here. I'm going to cover my roster, my games, because I can actually obviously tell you a lot about my games and how to win with Necrons, etc. in another video, hopefully tomorrow. However, for those of you dying to know, my list was... my roster was 7 flayed ones, 6 of them being regular, 1 of them being a zealot, a Lichguard combat with Warscythe, a Lichguard combat with the shield, 2 immortals, 1 being leader, 1 being comms, a warrior who was comms, and a Praetorian with Staff of Light. I think it's called a Staff of Light. The point there being that if I wanted to swap in a Praetorian for some reason, then I dropped a flayed one and an immortal, put in the warrior and the Praetorian, etc., etc. Or the Lichguard shield, that's the word. Because they're roughly the same points that fit into that list. Okay, third up we have Rob Sweeney with Harlequins. So again, I don't really know too much about this. However, I asked him, so let's see what he says. So he only took 8 models with him because he couldn't decide if he was going to use the Clowns or Space Marines, and it was a last minute decision to use Clowns. My understanding here is that he didn't swap out anything in his list, but I'm going to read verbatim what he told me about his games. He had a tough first game against Thousand Suns. He hid for the first turn to get close without losses to Cybolts. Makes sense. Second turn, he went all in, killed the leader Terminator, but lost a few Clowns, was winning quite well on points at that point. Third and fourth went badly for him with Zangor Horde tying up the Clowns and Cybolts killing the Clowns. That will happen. He finished 16-15, his win obviously. It's very tight. He maxed out 2 secondaries. Second game was against the Drukhari, who I played, so Eduardo there. He was leading at turn 2. However, turn 3, he rolled 4 flesh wounds, and then Eduardo outscored him on primaries. That's the way of the dice sometimes, definitely. He maxed out 3 secondaries, though, which is pretty amazing. Finished 17-14 to the Dark Eldar. Maxing out 3 secondaries is pretty impressive, and still losing. That's tough. Third game was against a Horde list of Death Guard. The Harlequins munched through the Poxwalkers, no problem. However, he kept away from the Flail and rolled well on saves and injuries. Maxed out 2 secondaries. Fourth game was against the Chill Team Reese. Reese taking Death Guard there. So Robbie here is having 2 games in a row against Death Guard. Close game, and they were tied on points until round 4. Pretty scary. On the 4th, Clowns took more primaries and contested the others. Ignored combat and faster movement helped. He thinks it finished around 15-11, something like that, and he maxed out 3 secondaries. In the 5th game, it was against Dex Salamanders, who we are going to be covering soon. The mission helped, as for those of you that don't know, it's the one where you deploy in this weird kind of diagonal corner one, where potentially, if you want, you can both deploy practically base to base. It's an odd deployment. However, Dex set up a gun line 9 inches away from the Clowns in cover, so he didn't get any overwatch. And at the end of the first turn, he lost 3 models and was broken. That's Deck, the Space Marine player. At the end of second turn, he had no leader and 2 models left, at which point he conceded. They then worked out the secondaries and how it all would have panned out mathematically. As I mentioned in my previous one, that is because Deck was unaware that the Harlequins can charge 3d6. Yeah. And there you go. That's pretty cool. So that is Harlequins. In 4th, we have Thousand Suns. So my understanding of this one was that Dave here brought along the 2 Cybolt guys in every list and basically didn't change anything. He didn't take any Rubric Marines. I think that's pretty standard at this point, unless you're taking them for the Warp Flamer or the Soul Reaper Cannon. You don't really take Rubric Marines if you just want to bolter on them. Mainly, you play them as Zangor spam with a Terminator Sorcerer and a Rubric Sorcerer. However, he did say on my Discord that if he were to do it again, he probably wouldn't take the Terminator Sorcerer, which is an interesting decision, because I would have assumed that he would then say, I just take more Zangors. Cool. But actually, he said he'd probably take one of the Terminator Gunners, give them the Hellfire pack, and cool gun. So that's interesting. Just that he wouldn't be taking, he would actually give up the entire thing that Thousand Suns get in Elites, which is double Cybolt, for a gunner. There you go. And that was 4th. 5th, we have Pete. Oh, Petey. So I'm not going to go into this too much because Pete actually did a really nice write-up over on Reddit about all of his matches, what he took, when he took it. But my understanding was he always took Pius Vaughn and Crusader, Gottfried Montbard, I believe. He then had, we see there, 3 Scions on the... Oh no, he had multiple Scions on the list that he could drop down either with Plasmas or Melters. And then he always took, I believe, 2 Flamers and then the rest just regular Guardsmen. If you want to know more about how he played the Astra Minotaurum, go check him out on Reddit. He made a post. The other thing to note is that obviously this is the 5th one, 5th place. He was on the top table. However, because he took a loss in the final game, it then went to secondaries. And presumably to be up on the top table, you have a pretty tough match. So he obviously wasn't scoring secondaries as well as he could have. Next up, we have Eduardo, who was my final match. I don't have his roster to hand. He did send it to me, but I'm useless. But I know what he was playing. My understanding is he played roughly the same thing in every match. He had it was rack spam. I believe he ended up with 3 Incubi in the list. No Mandrakes, which I was actually rather surprised by. He had them with him, but he didn't play them. At least he didn't play them against me. He took 2 Ossifactors and 1 sniper rifle and 2 flamer weapons. I can't remember if they're called Ossifactors or liquefire guns or hex rifles. Whatever they are. The rest were just racks, and that was it. A surprisingly simple and effective list. Next up, we have Deck. Deck was taking Salamanders. He is, I suppose I should take a moment to speak on this subject. It's cool that we have a Adeptus Astartes player near the top tables. It's a real shame that he had never played against Harlequins before and got completely blindsided by how they perform, because it meant that he ended up 7. He could have ended up being, where could he have been? 3rd. Now in a 30-man tournament, that's really big and indicative. Somebody that knows how to play the army, playing them well, probably some lucky rolls, let's be honest. We all get lucky rolls, that's how we win. But yeah, so he was a top 8 player, came 7th, but he could have been a top 3, which is actually really exciting. So he sent me his list, I'm going to read it out for you. He told me he brought the same thing for every match, not because he didn't have more models that he could have brought, just he kind of crafted the list to be a bit of an all-rounder, mainly be a gun line, but if he needed to get stuck in, he did have the classic, which I will read to you. So he had a Stern Guard Sergeant with all specs, bolt pistol, lightning claw, interesting, and special issue bolt gun on him. Intercessor gunner, all specs, auxiliary grenade launcher, bolt rifle. Stern Guard gunner, grav cannon and grav amp, heavy. I think we all know how cool the grav cannon is in this list, yep. Tactical sergeant with combi plasma is a sniper. Then he had a scout gunner with missile launcher camo cloak, scout gunner heavy bolter, and a vanguard sergeant with relic blade and storm shield. And that's it. So he's going into this entire tournament with only 7 models. I'm actually really surprised he got to where he did. Like, that's really impressive. It's a shame. I would have liked to have known how often he ended up using Death Denied. Anyway, let's see what else he said. He says he used the same list regardless of opponent, as he likes to think he maximised the gun power and had the Vanguard Sergeant and his leader with the Lightning Claws to balance out a bit of melee capability if needed. He went up against Tau, Death Guard and Admech and beat them by quite a margin. However, he lost to Peter's Guard, who again was Peter that we just looked at, who, although ending up in 5th, was at the top table, so an acceptable loss, I feel. And then obviously lost to Robbie's Harleys because he didn't know what Harleys did. Fair enough. And finally, the 8th player we have, or the 8th player, placed 8th. We have, again, I apologise for mispronouncing, but Jizz Lee, who seems to be doing rack spam, similar to Eduardo there. Let's take a look at this. Do we know, can we take out anything interesting? So he's got, as combat, he's got 2 Akhthist racks with a Venom Blade or Electro-Corrosive Whip, depending on what he wanted to take in there. Oh, I need to speak a bit more on this, don't I? Okay. He also has, so his Night Fiend, a Mandrake Night Fiend, is going to always be his leader. That's the only leader model he's got on the list. It seems like he actually is set up to take a soup if he needs. Let's have a think. So he's got Cabalite Warriors on there with a Dark Lance, a Split Rifle, and a Blaster. Okay, no Shredder. Interesting. Why has he done this? So I assume that if I worked out the points, this is actually a dual list, and he has enough mercenaries on there that if he's up against an elite army, he doesn't have to go racks. He can instead go Cabalites. So he's got the Dark Lance and the Blasters there. And then he will just take Incubi. Oh, he doesn't have any Incubi. Oh, maybe he would just take Mandrakes. That seems like a risky setup. So he could potentially have an 8-man list, which would just be his leader, the Mandrake, 3 more Mandrakes, who would usually, I assume, be his drop strike, deep strike squad, and a Clavex. Now, obviously, the Clavex on the list makes perfect sense. Definitely take one of those. Or maybe he would have souped it. Oh, you know what? He's got a Witch on there as well. Okay, so I suspect what he had was a rack spam list, and then next to that, he would have taken a soup list of just Cabalite Warriors, Witches, Mandrakes, Clavex, Night Fiend, obviously. Which is interesting. It's an interesting way to make up a Drukhari roster, having one of them be a dedicated Prophets of Flesh list, and then the other being a soup list. I haven't tried that myself. I've always tried to go dual list properly, so Prophets of Flesh list and, you know, a Kabbalite list, for example. But making sure that the Kabbalite list therefore has its full... But in all of those lists, I would always be making sure that the Kabbalite list could also take, you know, its full roster of list of Obsession, Drakari Obsession. So I haven't seen it done as a mono list and a soup list. That's interesting. Quite cool, actually. I'd be really interested to know if he ever actually took the soup list, and if so, how it worked out for him. Nice. And that's it. Those are the top 8 lists. I do have more rosters here, though. Let's go over them. I'm not going to talk about these too much, but I probably took these because I thought they were interesting. So up here we have a Jizz Lee Cults list. Mitchell ended up coming 9th. So that's actually not too shabby. That's why I've taken that. So I took James from, normally we just call him Barrett, I guess, from Chill Team Pod. Again, I took this because there were 3 Drakari lists. 2 of them having the capability to take Mono Coven, rack spam. But James, I know, went purely soup. Unfortunately, James didn't place too well. So, I don't know if that's indicative of anything, and I don't really know what he was running. He did have a Grotesque on the list, which is awesome, the Grotesque model. Lovely, if you only have one, otherwise it's monopose. But yeah, ignore that. Who else do we have? So Chris here with the Heretic Astartes. I took this because he came 11th. It's just good to see what's what. I believe he mainly took Cultist Spam with Berserkers, and that's it. Which is pretty standard. Pretty standard. Let's take a look. So he hasn't fallen for... Oh no, he has. He's got plasma pistols on his Berserkers. I'm actually really curious if Chris is watching. Did you ever fire a plasma pistol? I feel the plasma pistol, even though it's only a single point, which is great, is a bit of a points trap. If you have the point left over, drop it on them. However, as a Berserker, you're getting to attack twice. You should be killing what you connect with. So I feel like the plasma pistol probably not used much. Be really interested to know if you could drop a comment. That would be cool. Antonio here, who came 10th. I played against him. I'm going to be honest. I'm obviously going to go over my game with him later. He did really well. He should have beaten me, but he got unlucky on injury rolls, and he rolled 6s, and I was Necrons. It was just unlucky for him. Was there anything to mention about his list? So against me, and I can't speak about it against anybody else, he took 2 Fulgurite Priests. He didn't take any Corpuscari, which was interesting. Certainly against Necrons, Corpuscari are really good. Really good. So he should have gone with them, perhaps. But he took 2 Fulgurites, one of them being his leader, which I think is actually a fair pick. I don't mind the Fulgurite as leader. He took 2 Alphas, which I hadn't seen before. That was a bit of a random pick. I was like, oh, okay, not bad. Both of them had... Did they have the prods, the goads? No, I can't remember. I think they had the power swords, which actually worked pretty well against my flayed ones. So can't argue with that. And against my Lich Guard, who didn't have the 4-up invuln shield. Yeah, he had a really good close combat. Well, no, it was a mixed list, really. He still took 2 Auspexes, 2 Plasma Calivers, but then the rest of his points went all on close combat. Very effective. I'm not surprised he ended up 10th. He could have easily ended up top 3, I reckon. If I hadn't been the stumbling block that he went against. Specifically, if Necrons hadn't been the stumbling block he went against, let's be clear on that, he probably should have gone higher. We've been over that. We've been over that. We've been over that. We've been over that. That's for another time. And that's it. Well, this has been a really non-clickbaity, no super cool things I can put at the beginning of the video. This has just been an honest breakdown of the top 8, well 10, 11 rosters. I suppose the only minor thing to note is in Monday's video, I did say that there was only one Grey Knight player, but it turns out there were 2. But the second Grey Knight player was one of the ones that didn't show as having a faction. And he doesn't know why, and I don't know why. And that's it. Cool. Well, join me tomorrow for the breakdown of my games, and perhaps I can explain to you how some of these amazing players lost to a scrub. Anyway, this has been Glass Half Dead. Let me know what you think about these rosters. Do you think anybody took some weird picks? Do you think anything I don't know. Do you think? Do you think? This has been Glass Half Dead. I hope you've had a good day, and I hope you continue to have a good day. Goodbye.